What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Today's video, we're going to continue our fantasy football coverage in preparation for the 2024 season. We're going to be doing 3 mock drafts at 3 different positions. I'm going to put all in one video, give you some idea of some of the draft strategy that I'm looking at, depending on where you're drafting. So if you're interested in more content like this, fantasy football, music, other stuff like that, please check out my channel. I make a wide variety of content. You can check it out in the description below. So we're going to get into it here with our first mock draft. This is going to be picking in the 3rd position. Starting here at 103, I was shocked to have this happen. Christian McCaffrey fell into my lap here at the 103 pick. They decided to go with CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill first. There's some concerns about Christian McCaffrey with his injury going into the season, but for me personally, I'm not too concerned about that because you look at the rest of the running back room, I think Christian McCaffrey has a clear lead on them. You've also got Brandon Ayuk with his contract issues. And I just think that everything sets up well for Christian McCaffrey to continue to dominate. I think that his game is going to continue to age well through the years. I don't see signs of him slowing down. I think he's still going to be a relevant fantasy football player for at least 2 or 3 more seasons. This is an easy pick for me at 103, and I'm thrilled to have, in my opinion, the best player on the board falling into my lap at 103. So next we go throughout the rest of this first round. Other guys that were a consideration for me potentially at that position, I was looking at Hill is the guy I was thinking I would get. But among the receivers that are also available, Jefferson and Chase are both good to me. I like them slightly more than the rest of the guys on this board. Those were really the guys I was looking at this position. As you continue on down the rest of the first round, a lot of the typical characters are going that you see in the first round. You get all the receivers early, and then you kind of start to get to those running backs along the range of Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Saquon Barkley, guys like that. I really wanted to see if ETN would drop to me, but he did not. Neither did Jonathan Taylor. Other receivers I was looking at potentially would be nice to get Marvin Harrison, but he's going generally early second, early first. Not too high on guys like Drake London, Devontae Adams, but thankfully I didn't have to worry about them. And it comes back around to me at 210. Guys I was looking at now with the board left, I was looking at these running backs coming up in the next round, Devon Achane and Derrick Henry. Also put some thought into Deebo Samuel because he is, depending on what happens with Ayuk, Samuel could have a huge load in this offense. But I already have Christian McCaffrey, so that kind of put me out of the picture for that. So to me, the clear pick was Mike Evans. And there's a lot of questions about Mike Evans because of his age, but for me personally, I'm not really too concerned about that. The thing I like about him is that he's locked into the system in Tampa Bay. There's a clear hierarchy that Mike Evans is 1, and Chris Godwin is 2 in terms of the receiving options, and it's a pretty big gap between 1 and 2. Also, Rachaad White in the backfield. You know, they are losing Dave Canales, but I think Mike Evans is pretty much locked and loaded as the wide receiver 1, should continue to dominate, and I'm happy to get him here at the 210. Coming back around, thankfully, the quarterbacks went, and I don't like taking quarterbacks this high, so thankfully I didn't really have to worry about them. But the guy that I decided to go with here among considerations of Deebo, Josh Jacobs, stuff like that, is I decided to go with Devon Achane. And I understand this is a big risk. I'm not generally very high on taking Achane in the 2nd round, but early 3rd, I could see the value in that. And the reason being is that I already have Christian McCaffrey. I already have a locked and loaded RB1. If I could get an elite RB2, just lock 2 guys into my running backs, then that gives me tremendous value. I really don't have to worry about that position and can continue to roll with 2 dominant guys. And if worse comes to worse, Achane doesn't pan out, there's running backs I like later that I could sub in his place. So it's a risk, but of all the guys left on the board, I think Achane has the best home run potential that could lead to a fantasy championship. As we continue through the 3rd, the other guys I was looking into, thought about Pacheco as well at that position too. I was hoping to get Cooper Kupp to come back around to me. Figured that wasn't going to happen. He went at the 4-3. James Cook was another guy I was looking at. Maybe Lamar Jackson or Mark Andrews if they fell to me, but that didn't happen either. It got back around to me at 410. So now I'm looking at trying to get some receivers because they really drop off after the 5th round in terms of the elite value there. and I decided to go with Tank Dell. Tank Dell, I believe, is going to continue to improve. I know he's coming off an injury, but I think of all the Texans receivers, he's the one that I like the most in fantasy football. Diggs, I've got a lot of question marks about his performance last season, coming over to a new team, what that's going to look like for him. Nico Collins is a little bit too rich of a value for me going into the third round, but Dell falling into the 4 or 5 turn is excellent value, and I think that CJ Stroud has the best rapport with Tank Dell of these three. So to me, that's the best option in terms of Houston wide receivers. I think he's going to be excellent, especially in a full PPR format. I was really putting a lot of interest in Kamara coming back to me at this next pick, but that didn't end up happening. And I think it's more important at this point to lock in an elite wide receiver to go with that. And one that I really like, who you will see a trend in this in my videos, is Amari Cooper. Going into the 5th round, I talked about Mike Evans earlier. Mike Evans last year was going very late and was excellent value. I think Amari Cooper is going to be similarly, he's going to have great value this season. And I think the reason he's falling is because of Deshaun Watson, not really knowing what his situation is going to look like this next season. But Amari Cooper is a clear number 1 option on this team. He is extremely dominant. He won people fantasy football championships last year. And I think that this is going to continue because I think Kevin Stefanski knows how to get him involved. He's going to continue to do that. Really like Amari Cooper going in the 5th round in this range. So going back around, more quarterbacks going off the board, Anthony Richardson, Joe Burrow. I did think about Anthony Richardson as well, but there are quarterbacks I like later that I think could replicate his value. And then you get some of these other wide receivers going off the board, and this is where it really starts to fall off once you get past T. Higgins and George Pickens. Things really kind of dip a little bit. David Montgomery I was really interested in as well, depending on what happens with Jahmyr Gibbs' injury. So I decided to go with Jayden Reed here. And I really like Jayden Reed because you're getting him in 6th round value, and he may very well be the Packers wide receiver 1. He's a hot ticket this year. A lot of people have him pretty high, but a lot of people are also very low on him because of the other receivers in that system. What are they all going to look like? But when Jayden Reed played, he was the most efficient of the receivers, and he had the best rapport with Jordan Love. So I think that's going to continue to be a trend moving forward. And the guy that I was targeting here in the 7th round that thankfully fell to me was Kyler Murray. And I talked about Anthony Richardson earlier. Kyler Murray is just as effective on the ground as Anthony Richardson, but is also a prolific passer, and he has some weapons to work with this year. He's got Marvin Harrison now. He's got Trey McBride. Kyler Murray also going later helps with his ADP as well, and played excellent last season when he came back from his injury. So Kyler Murray, getting him in the 7th round, very happy about that. That locks in my QB position. We continue to go around the board, and my time is running up, so get through this in 2 more minutes. So now I'm looking at getting the tight ends, because tight ends really drop when you get to that 8-9 round turn. Once you get past David Njoku and Jake Ferguson, that's kind of the benchmark where if you don't have a tight end, you got to get one of those, because then you're dealing with guys like TJ Hawkinson, who's probably not going to play this season, Dallas Goedert, who's not effective or consistent, I would say, and other guys that are just dart throws. So I'm very thankful that Jake Ferguson did fall to me here, because I think that he is one of the last tight ends that are probably going to be a consistent option for you throughout the season. So getting Jake Ferguson, he's very likely going to be the number 2 receiving target on this team. Very happy about that. Next, in the 9th round, I grabbed Tajay Spears. Tajay Spears, I think, is going to be a better running back moving forward than Tony Pollard in Tennessee, and really like how he's going in the 9th round here. You could get a guy who's, I think, is going to become the RB1 on this team by the end of the season, and it's going to be excellent value here in the 9th round. It comes back around to me, and thankfully the guy that I was targeting, Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, falls to me in the 10th round. This is one of my favorite targets to get late. Chase Brown doesn't have much competition ahead of him, Zach Moss, but Chase Brown is by far more explosive, by far younger, fits the timeline of the rest of this team. Chase Brown, getting him in the 10th round, maybe it doesn't pan out, but if you get the potential that you could get with him as an RB1 in the Bengals offense, that's incredible. Really love that value. And then, thankfully, at the next running back position, I get Jerome Ford, who is also another excellent RB sleeper late. So all three of these guys are all guys that I really like, Spears, Brown, and Ford, that you could target late in the running back position, and they give you some excellent value there. And I'm going to go a little bit over on this to get it through the rest of these picks. I do apologize. Here you see the classic kicker mistake that I've talked about for years on this channel, that you never want to take kickers that high. Brandon Aubrey's going to be good, but he's not an 11th round worthy pick when you still have 5 rounds to go. So yeah. And as you go all the way around the draft board, you're starting to get more of the kickers picked, just disappointing. And then, not for me, but for the other people who happen to take him. So it comes back around to me, and I get Josh Palmer, who I really like as well, because going very late, could be the wide receiver 1 on the Chargers. Great dart throw that I think could really pan out well for you. Really like Josh Palmer among these late round receivers. Another running back that I really like that I was able to snag here as well, Rico Dowdle of the Dallas Cowboys. They have a very murky running back situation because Zeke is the one that's supposed to be leading the team, which is not good. And Rico Dowdle is impressing in camp. I think there's an excellent possibility that he could be the starting running back by midseason and could be a fantasy sleeper. So of all these running backs that I really like late, I happen to grab all 4 of them. And you'll see in my later drafts that you'll see a common trend of that happening. We'll wrap things up real quick. Dallas Cowboys are the defense I went with. I've generally been trying to pick defense in the last round and then just not draft a kicker because you don't have to. And I'm just going to play the game of grabbing one before week 1 on Sunday morning. And Jahan Dotson I'm holding on to. This is before he got traded to Philadelphia, but I think that he could be a breakout player. I liked him better in Washington, so if I were to hold on to this team long term, I may consider picking up somebody else. But he's the guy that I have positioned in that last spot. Wait and see if something happens, and if nothing does, then I use it to pick up the kicker that I need to start for that week. If it turns out to be an excellent opportunity, I may consider dropping one of these running backs or Josh Palmer. All right, so that takes us out of that mock draft. Now we're going to go to the number 7 pick. So I'm picking one in the beginning, one in the middle, and one at the end to kind of show you the different strategies that you could use. So in this draft now, I'm picking 7th, and Christian McCaffrey obviously didn't fall to me that far. And I'm happy with what I ended up getting here as well because I got A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is one of the receivers that I really like that I think is not getting talked about enough among the elite options. There's a lot of question marks among the top guys. CeeDee Lamb with his contract. Chase, same thing. Jefferson, what does the quarterback situation look like? I still like all those guys ahead of A.J. Brown right now, but if those situations don't get resolved, I think A.J. Brown could easily become a top 4 wide receiver, maybe even higher. So really like him here, and I'm going to really like him in this mid-round range as well because of the possibility to stack, which I'm going to get to in a little bit. So coming back around at this range, the running back that I mentioned earlier that I'm really targeting in this range is Travis Etienne. And I really like Etienne because he was an elite running back last season who is a great pass-catching running back, very explosive. The Jaguars have made some steps to improve their offense. They've got some more receiving options in there to hopefully space the field a little bit. And Travis Etienne, I think, is going to continue to be very good, and getting him in this mid-round, second-round range is excellent value. I'm happy to take him here at this point in the second round. Etienne is one of the guys that I'm really targeting. I would really be interested in Saquon if he fell here too, but I already have A.J. Brown, so not really interested in that. So the big reason that I like A.J. Brown in the second round is because of the potential to stack with Jalen Hurts in the third round. And thankfully, Jalen Hurts did fall to me at 3-7. Jalen Hurts is my top quarterback on the board. He obviously gives you a lot of rushing value. And I think that the thing with Hurts is the way Philadelphia's season ended last year, a lot of people are down on that team. But I think that they're still excellent. And they just added Saquon to their team as well, who was literally carrying the Giants offense. Um, Dealt with some injuries last season. I think Philadelphia is still going to be very good for fantasy. I'm not sure if they're going to be as a team as good as they've been in years past, but still, I think for fantasy, Jalen Hurts is an elite rushing value. He's got some great weapons around him. Always going to get a rushing touchdown every game. It seems like that gives you some points. So to get the Hurts Browns stack is excellent. Going all in on the Eagles here. And I think that if those type of things pan out, where they really can be excellent, if they both go off, it really helps your fantasy football teams. Really like stacking, especially with this group here. My top stack in fantasy football this season. So coming back around now at this point, looking to get a little more help at the wide receiver position. But if there is a really good running back that falls to me, then I would really like to grab one of those. And a guy that fell to me at this range that I do really like, despite interest in some of these other receivers here that I've thought about as well, like Tank Dell, who I mentioned earlier, is James Cook. And James Cook, I think, is also another one of those guys that is slept on because he hasn't really had a huge breakout yet. But when they changed their offensive coordinator, Joe Brady, mid-season, James Cook really took off and was probably one of the most consistent weapons that Josh Allen had on that team. There's a lot of question marks at wide receiver. Running back, James Cook was very involved in the passing game. I think that this is going to be very centric on James Cook and Dalton Connect. But getting James Cook here at running back, I think, is going to be great for me. Really happy about getting him at this range. So I have 2 running backs set, but I do need to get some more receivers. And now I'm going to start getting into some familiar faces that I've talked about before. And coming back around to me again is Amari Cooper. And I already talked about Amari Cooper a few minutes back. But again, of guys that you could get in the 5th round, this is, to me, the best value. I think Amari Cooper is your clear one. I think that they're still going to find ways to get him involved. The quarterback play is obviously questionable. But if he was able to put up 50 points with Joe Flacco, I think that he should be fine to be a great fantasy starter when he's got Deshaun Watson there. And maybe he turns it around and can recreate the magic of his Texans days, and then it becomes even better. Then coming back around at this point, I thought a lot about James Conner if he would have fallen to me here, but I decided to go with Jayden Reed again. And Jayden Reed, I really like him. I think that he is, again, excellent value there in the 6th round. Could be easily a top 10 receiver in my opinion. I think that getting Cooper and Reed are both late round values that will really pay off very well. So I'm very happy with my core that I have right now. 2 good running backs, 3 good receivers. So now I've got to start focusing on getting that tight end. And this is generally a theme that I have, is trying to get a good tight end in that 7th round range. Do not let yourself fall past Jake Ferguson. And this is a little bit of a tier designation here as you start to get into that Bowers, Njoku, Ferguson range. And that's generally when I'm taking tight ends because I think all 3 of them are pretty good value. Brock Bowers is the one I was interested in the most here because I already have Cooper on the Browns. But I decided to go with Njoku over Ferguson here because I think Njoku gives you a little bit more potential to be involved throughout the whole length of the field. Ferguson is more of a touchdown-dependent receiver who's going to be involved in the red zone. But I think Njoku, since he is going to be a little bit more of a field spacer, is going to have a bigger role with the Browns consistently throughout the season. Ferguson may give you some down weeks from here to there, but I can see Njoku always being consistently involved. Njoku was also the best tight end to close the season last year. So doubling up on the Browns, but I think it's going to still be a good situation for me here. So coming back around, this is where the running back picture gets a little interesting here. So you start to get into that range of guys where you're not quite at the big sleepers yet, but you're at the range of guys that are kind of on the fringe that they either could break out or they could be really disappointing. Tony Pollard, for example, Zamir White, Nick Chubb dealing with injury, Javonte Williams, dealing with injury, also not looking very impressive in camp. Jonathan Brooks, major injury. Jalen Warren, dealing with injury now, / Najee Harris being on his team too. So of all the guys, I decided to go with Austin Eckler. And I know a lot of people are down on Eckler, but he's only 2 years removed from being a top 5 fantasy running back and a consensus first-round pick last season. He also had Brandon Staley as his head coach last season, which, again, is not good. But now he's heading to Washington. He's going to be under an explosive offensive system with Cliff Kingsbury. It's a risky pick here, but getting him in the 8th round, if he could get anything close to what he was like in his prime days with the Los Angeles Chargers, this is incredible value here. And I'm happy to get Eckler at this range as a guy that I can have as my 3rd running back. And, if things turn out really well, he could be an every week starter. If not, there's some other guys that I like as well that I can pick later. So we'll wrap this up in the next 2 minutes to get on to next draft. A lot of wide receivers went here that I was interested in. Jackson Smith and Jigba, Lad McConkey. So at this point in the draft, I need to get another receiver because things do drop off quite a bit with receivers once you get past this range as well. There's a 5th round drop off and there's also a 10th round drop off for wide receivers. I do like Brian Thomas more than Jameson Williams, but I decided to go Jameson Williams here because I already have ETN on this team. And Jameson Williams is in a situation where he could emerge as the number 2 wide receiver in Detroit. He has a good path to do that. A lot of question marks with him, but I think that there's a clear path for him that's available. He's an ex-first round pick. And if he does boom as a 9th round pick, this is also excellent value here that I really like. So now I'm going to continue to try to get some more running backs, continue to try to get some more receivers to build my depth since I already got the QB and tight end taken care of. Comes back around to me at this point, and I really wanted Tajay Spears and Chase Brown, but they both went. So I had to pivot to my next plan, which I decided to go with Cortland Sutton here. And there's not a lot of receivers at this range that I really like a ton, but Cortland Sutton, of all the guys that are left at this point in the 10th round, is a guy that could be the number 1 on his team. And if Bo Nix, who's looked impressive so far in preseason, happens to pop, then it's even more value there. Then I get back around and I snatch Rico Dowdle, who is a guy that I really like. I talked about in the last draft. I've been picking him up in almost every sleeper mock draft that I've been getting because you get him so late and he has such a great opportunity to take over the number 1 role on his team. Comes back around again, and I decide to go with Chuba Hubbard, who's another running back that I like, who I think is also getting slept on. Not as much as those other 4 that I mentioned earlier, but because it's the Panthers and they're probably not going to be good again. But if he does get a big workload and Jonathan Brooks takes a while to get back, that's excellent value. I decided to go with Jalen Wright as my next running back as kind of a deep stash sleeper to see what happens in case Achane and Mostert gets hurt. Then Wright could be an excellent sleeper here at this range as well. Picked up Jahan Dotson again among my late receiver sleepers. And then decided to go with the Chiefs defense to close things out. And the Chiefs defense I really like if you can get them here in this late range because a defense that's not thought of to be very good, but is actually like excellent. Everybody thinks of the Chiefs as being this high-powered offensive team. And really their defense is what's been carrying them. And that's been the model for the last 2 seasons. So we'll close this out with our last mock draft picking from the 12th position. And a lot of times people, when they get the 12th pick, they give up and they're like, oh, my fantasy season is over before it even started. I'm picking last. And this part of this video is to show you that that's not always true. If you're picking last, you could actually get a really good advantage by, one, getting the first pick of the next round. But the other thing is that you control in 2 picks getting the guys that you want. So, for example, if there's 2 guys you really like, you don't have to worry about waiting to see if one gets to you or not because you're picking back to back. So if there's 2 guys you really like, just go ahead and take them, and then you can get around to your next point on the board. You have a wide range to pick 2 people that you really like, and that really could be kind of a nice advantage in that you don't have to stress out as much about waiting for somebody around you and wondering what they're going to do. So all the guys that I talked about as first round selections here are pretty much gone. So when you're looking at this first, second round turn, the guys that I like that could realistically fall to me, Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor, I both like. I prefer Taylor because he's more locked into a number one position, and he's also not injured right now with Jahmyr Gibbs has come back from a hamstring injury. So Taylor is my number one running back who I did end up taking here of the guys that are realistically available. I do like Kyren Williams and Saquon as well, but I think Jonathan Taylor is just a more explosive player in my opinion, and I think that Shane Steichen is going to figure out ways to get him involved in this offense, and it's going to make this a pretty good offense that's going to revolve around Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor's legs to be a very effective offense. So wide receivers. So now that I've got like so when I'm picking at these turns, I really want to make sure that I get, coming out of the turn, a good wide receiver and a good running back, because by the time you get back around to the end of the third round, the options really diminish there. So unless you're getting a really elite running back, like if Bijan fell, then I would go Bijan and Taylor. But coming out of this turn, I want to make sure I get a good wide receiver. I'm not too high on Puka, actually. And then these other wide receivers that are going, like Drake London, Devontae Adams, Chris Olave, are not great options either. So of the guys that come back to me, I decided to go with Marvin Harrison Jr. for the most upside. And if I happen to get Kyler as well later, which could be in the cards as well for me, I would not, no pun intended with that. I kind of set myself up for that. But if he does fall, then I get a stack there. So that would be very intriguing to me as well. So I decided to go with Marvin Harrison here. Has a lot of upside, but picking here at the draft, I want to go with the guys that have the most upside, and I think Harrison has the best among the guys available here. It comes all the way back around to me, and by miracle's chance, there's 3 quarterbacks taken, and none of them are Jalen Hurts. So then Jalen Hurts is sitting right in my lap here at 312. I already talked about why I liked him, and I'm going to take him as my quarterback here. So I'm thrilled to get him here at the 312 position. And it goes to show that sometimes when guys slip like this, you can pounce on it. And you still have another pick coming up to get somebody else you really like. And I really like Cooper Kupp. And the reason that I like Kupp, I haven't talked about him too much yet, but he is an elite wide receiver who dealt with injuries last season, and is just 2 years removed from being the best wide receiver in football, debatably. Now he is in the 4th round. Puka is hurt, and I think that this sets up perfectly for him to break out again. His play style is dependent on separation, so that is one of those things that age as well as guys get older, like Cooper Kupp is starting to get. This is excellent value in the 4th round. He is one of my favorite targets here at this range, and I'm thrilled to get him at 4-1. So at this point, I have Jalen Hurts as my quarterback. My wide receivers are Marvin Harrison and Cooper Kupp, and my running back is Jonathan Taylor. That's pretty solid for 4 guys that you're getting picking last in the 1st round. So again, do not let one round define, like where you're picking in the draft does not define how you're going to do in fantasy football. It's dependent on not only how you draft, but how you pay attention throughout the season. I'm going to make videos that talk about that as we go along. Really wanted Amari Cooper again, and miraculously he almost fell to me. He went the pick right before me in this range. But that didn't happen, and I decided to go with T. Higgins. T. Higgins is somebody that I like because of his ADP, and I also think the Bengals are going to be very focused on him and Chase. There's not too much else in the receiving core among guys that are reliable, so it's going to be very heavily based around those 2 players, I believe. And T. Higgins in the 5th round is excellent. I almost like T. Higgins at his position more than Chase going at his position in the draft. But very happy with my receiving core right now. And I decided to double up on my Jaden Reed take. I would have considered James Conner. The reason I did not take him is because I already have a Cardinal and did not really want to double up on that. Didn't really need to take Burrow because I already have Hurts. And then after that, there's a pretty big drop off. So I decided to get a receiver that I was comfortable in. And for the 3rd mock, I'm taking Jaden Reed. That shows how much that I like him. Coming back around to me, so now I've got to get the tight ends taken care of. It's that 7th round. I'm expecting it's going to be Ferguson, but again, very lucky to have David Njoku fall to me at this range. And that was, again, the guy that I grabbed at that position. Really like David Njoku there. So at this point, this is where the video starts to get a little bit controversial. And I personally, thinking back about this, I may have gone with Warren instead or Austin Eckler instead of this pick. But I decided to go with Nick Chubb here because picking this late, I looked at Nick Chubb and I was thinking to myself, if there's any chance that he does get back to being fully healthy again, this would be an excellent value to grab him here in the 8th round. I do really like his position here. If Nick Chubb were to fall to you, the purpose of this is to show you that I am comfortable drafting Nick Chubb, especially at his ADP that he's going right now. I don't love the pick, but this is I'm changing things up in these drafts, and the purpose of this is to kind of show you that you can still set up a team with Nick Chubb and feel comfortable with that. You can stash him on your bench for a couple weeks, and if he does get back to Nick Chubb of old, then now my running back core is Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb, which is excellent if you're getting those guys in their best form. Coming back around, I get 2 running backs that I really like. Tajay Spears, I get a little bit late. I was happy that he fell to me in that 8th round range. And then Chase Brown is not expected to go to his ADP for another 12 picks, I believe, when I did this draft. But I grabbed him here because I want to make sure that I get that guy on my team. And having the luxury of picking back-to-back, I don't have to worry about taking risks or playing games. I just decided to get the guy that I really want, and that was Chase Brown. And that's one of those things that's nice about this, like I was saying earlier, is that you can, if you really love someone, just go ahead and take it. You don't have to worry about like, oh, well, what if I wait and then somebody may not? Because you can't afford to wait and stuff like this when you have 22 picks before you. So Chase Brown is on my team, so I'm very happy to have Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, and then if Chubb is, while he's recovering, I can go with Spears and Chase Brown. Was hoping that maybe by chance that Jerome Ford could fall back to me, but that didn't happen. So I decided to get Josh Palmer and Rico Dowdle, both who I've talked about. Don't really need to go into them more. Coming back around to me at the 13 pick. So I usually go with defenses late, but since I'm picking early, I decided to go defense early and picked up the Dallas Cowboys. I am not very comfortable with taking the 49ers and the Jets at their ADP, but I really like where the Dallas Cowboys are falling kind of around that 3rd defense range. So very happy to grab them here. And again, when you're picking in these late rounds like this, sometimes you got to reach for these low density positions that you may not want to get earlier. That's part of why I took Jalen Hurts in the 3rd round like I did, instead of waiting to see if maybe Anthony Richardson or Kyler Murray fell to me. So I did this with the Dallas Cowboys because by the time it gets back around to me, like the Titans defense is going in the 15th round, and that's nothing that I want to mess with at all. And then I decided to get another receiver that I really like at his ADP, Dontavian Wicks. So he is going around the range of the 2nd to last round. And, it's a little redundant to have Jaden Reed there, but if Dontavian Wicks does emerge, you're getting him in the last round as a guy that is really going to be excellent value for you potentially. So let's wait to see how that develops in camp, stash him for a little bit. And then my sleeper pick that I decided to hold on to in place of the kicker spot is Kamani Vidal. And the reason that I decided to do this is, what if J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are dealing with injuries, which they mostly seem to dealt with throughout their careers, and then now you're down to Kamani Vidal as the starting running back for the Chargers. Then I would want to hold on to him for week 1. But for now, I'm monitoring that situation on this team. I'm going to see if it looks like there's going to be a path to him starting. Maybe he's like, there's some leaks coming out of camp and stuff like that. But if things do, then okay, well, I'll hold on to him. Maybe I'll cut Wicks and, pick up the kicker on Sunday. But the purpose of these drafts, if you notice, is I didn't draft a kicker at all in all 3 of them, because there's really no reason to hold a kicker on your roster at this stage when there's all these guys that are competing for camps, late round sleepers that you can grab. Wait to pick up that kicker until you absolutely have to on Sunday. And honestly, you can even do it on Monday too. I've talked about that as well, like some of the cheat codes you can use with kickers that can help you throughout the season. But that's all that I have for this video. And if you're interested in more fantasy football content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good one. I'll talk to you guys soon.